fun question for the end of the show. And there's been a lot of work going to this, ladies and gentlemen. Dion has been developing questions that he's going to ask us toward the end of the show. And we've been instructed not to share our answers or talk about it until this very moment. So the floor is yours.
So since we've kind of been track focused this week, I want to know your guys' top 5 tracks in no specific order, just your favorite tracks, the tracks that come to your mind. When I ask you to think of 5, give them to me.
Are we going in any sort of order? Did I write down? No particular order, but
order. Yeah, no
order. This is our favorite tracks to go attend a race or to participate in a race.
I just did like favorite tracks.
It's just overall.
Favorite facilities.
Okay. All
right, Mike, you go first.
Well, we were just talking about Rockingham Dragway, and Steve Earwood, longtime owner of Rockingham Dragway. I believe he's retiring at the end of this year, and I think Rockingham Dragway is a track that was kind of like the crown jewel or one of the biggest facilities for the IHRA in the heyday of IHRA Pro Mod. And then, of course, the barn burner, kind of redefined barn burner during drag stock. Was it drag stock 3? Was the first one. 3 and 4 were both pretty wild there at Rockingham Dragway. A facility that has sort of fossilized over time a little bit. It's certainly seen its better days when it was sort of one of the mega strips, and now it's kind of one of these one of the longest standing tracks in North Carolina. That's one of my favorites. My list is North Carolina centric, believe it or not.
That's okay. Shocking.
Another old school track, Farmington Dragway. We talk about this a lot. We talk about venues making a difference when you're presenting 8th mile drag racing, especially 8th mile pro mod racing. If you went to Farmington Dragway right now, you would be shocked or scared to know that people used to run 3-second pro mods every week at this track. And that, to me, that sort of daredevil mentality, and that it's almost like we didn't know any better, or those drivers didn't know any better, didn't have an option to race at a facility more suited to the speed of those cars. No. When you see 2 nitrous cars with flames nearly touching going down through there, Farmington Dragway on a Saturday night, and the crowd roaring, to me, that was about as good as it got when I was kind of coming up in this deal. So Farmington, Rockingham, Z-Max Dragway, just because of what it represents, to me, the investment that the Smith family's made in the sport, and that is the new standard for the Taj Mahal, Bellagio of drag strips, whatever you want to say. And I know that they don't, in our mind as hardcore purists, they don't do enough with that facility, but the events they do have, especially the 4-wide nationals coming up at the end of this month, are great for this area. And I hope that investment and the Smiths family commitment to racing continues on through that track. Galat Motorsports Park.
Oh wow,
Baby Z-Max is what I like to call
Z-Max. I like that name.
It's like we talked about on the PDRA live show this past Thursday. It's like Galat was custom made for a big 8th mile door slammer drag race, and it's the place to race here in North Carolina for that type of car. Again, another huge investment by the Wells family, and just, to me, it's really cool to see how many good tracks we have here in the Carolinas. And then my only non-North Carolina track that made the list is Summit Motorsports Park, Norwalk, Ohio, the Bader family, just because of how that family runs that operation. Clean, well kept. Everyone there is proud and is happy to be there.
Yeah,
they're dressed to the nines in their white slacks, the whole deal. And then the independent events they have in addition to the national event. So
the Carpenter family's had some significant success in Norwalk as well.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we won a couple races there.
Back-to-back years. Won ADRL Pro Nitrous back-to-back years in the old famed and feared 55 Chevy, man.
Yep. So that's probably another reason why it stands out. So that's my list. That's my 5.
Wes, you are the only one that also had Summit Motorsports Park on your list.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, I'm glad there's some overlap. JT, let's hear yours.
There's a little bit of overlap. Oh, okay.
I did mine a little different.
Shocking.
And I didn't elaborate as much as Mike did on each track.
That's fine.
So, and I haven't been to many tracks if you guys have. So I just did the best track parties that I've been to.
That's good. That's good.
You know, like
you're
where we had some
qualified.
of the best parties and best times. And Vandemir,
Vandemir.
yeah, of course, we've had some good times there. Darlington,
Good.
had too much time there, or too much of a good time there.
Too much time.
Yeah, too much time as well. Orlando, we had an awesome time at the World Door Slammer Nationals. SGMP, we've had several parties there, and Memphis goes back to probably when Tyler was throwing his races there. We've had some really good parties there.
Wow. Okay. So Vandemir, there's Vandemir
was tough for me to leave off of mine. If I had 6, Vandemir was going to be my
It feels a little bit like you did that.
We should kick
on
you off the
purpose.
show for not including Vandemir.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, listen, this was really hard
list,
for me.
man. And I decided to keep it North Carolina heavy.
I mean, I watched Wes cry at Vandemir. I mean, that just sealed it for me.
Shut up.
Yeah. Well, if that's
you don't got
criteria, that's not very.
I cry a
exclusive.
lot, right? Yeah. No, I don't actually. But
No.
But I get emotional about racing things. I really did almost get emotional watching that Scott Jeffrey on Warren Johnson clip because I'm just so proud of our sport, and I get emotional about it. I get in my feels about it. But I think that's actually a good list, and you're right, man. Orlando Speed World Dragway, they were on my honorable mentions. I went ahead. You know me, I couldn't just stop at 5, but I threw a couple of
I didn't
honorable
even
mentions.
write your honorable mentions.
Yeah,
I did some honorable mentions.
Fire them off.
I was worried that Dion was going to tell me it had to be tracks that were still active because I have a couple on my list that are not active right now. But I'll burn through mine.
Let's hear 'em.
These are in no particular order, but I also got to give it up to the Bader family, Summit Motorsports Park in Norwalk, Ohio. It's another just landmark happening, the NHRA national event every June, right around the 4th of July. And to your point, Mike, the white pants, everybody's buttoned up, looking like $1 million. The facility's fantastic. The media center's unbelievable. $1 for a pound of ice cream, any flavor you want, pretty much. I get a kick out of flying into Cleveland. I don't know why. I like that Quaker State.
Dion can't figure that out.
That Quaker State little cafe, you know what I'm talking about? That's in the airport. I always end up there, like waiting for my flight. And I like the drive. I always get to Cleveland late and have to make a late night drive into the little bitty town of Norwalk, headed to the Kalahari. I have a ton of memories at the Kalahari Resort, which is a water park for kids where everybody in the NHRA stays. My wife and I have had some very memorable trips there. We've had some late nights there and just great times. And I think that's an incredible facility that I look forward to every year. Right. I also had Vandemir Speedway out there in Morrison, Colorado, outside of Denver on my list, obviously home of the World Series of Pro Mod for 3 years. Just a place that's near and dear my heart and forever will be. I love that community. I love that venue. I love the way it looks. I love everything about it. I love the Crisp family. I love the Vandemir family. There's just a lot of incredible memories there. Red Rocks is on the right on the other side of the mountains. I love Denver in a lot of different ways. So it's just an incredible spot. And I think that's a drag strip that means a lot to the sport, like just to the sport as a whole. Thirdly, and again, these are in no particular order, Old Bridge Township Raceway Park in Englishtown, New Jersey. I think it's the proximity to New York City, the feeling of big time-idness, even though the facility, rough around the edges, not the nicest facility. I can't count the number of times I'd go there and there'd be like people last minute weed eating, knee-high grass in a parking lot. It wasn't the best kept facility in the world. There was always a really strong police presence there, like the New Jersey State Patrol, and I never loved that. And they were, real strict about where you can be and where you can go. But so much history there. Jim Halsey makes the first ever 5-second run for a nitrous door slammer in the quarter mile. All of David Hance's shakedowns at E-Town. I remember flying all the way up to New York City to go to the shakedown at E-Town one of the last years it happened, to meet Van Abernathy. We were going to go to the race. The deal gets rained out, canceled. So we ended up just spending the weekend in downtown New York City, like right in Times Square. Had a fantastic time being a tourist. But that just facility, it's got heart and soul. I watched some of the best racing I've ever seen at that track, seen records set. just a ton of memories, a ton of history for our sport. And I love that place and I miss it badly. The other one is kind of the only backyard track that I mentioned, Mid-America Raceway in Winsville, Missouri. It's long gone. It's now a housing development. I actually found a really sad story on the internet last night looking at this stuff.
Is it Winsville where Bill Coleman's from?
Yeah, Bill Coleman, the Pro Mod legend, is from Winsville, Missouri. And that track, it was one of the racetracks that I remember going to as a kid. It's outside. This is a suburb of St. Louis, everybody. So Mid-America Raceway has been gone for a long time, but I went racing with my dad and my uncles pretty much every weekend of my youth, right? And we went to a lot of places a lot, right? We weren't touring pros. We were local yokel bracket racers and grassroots racers. So we went to a lot of the same places, and some of them would grow tired. Like you'd go to the same place or whatever, but I never got tired of going to Mid-America Raceway in Winsville. And it was home to a drag strip, but also a road course. And I never went to any of the road course events, and apparently they had some really significant ones there. But I remember going to that track, and it was so big, and we always pitted in the same place pretty much. And my dad had a Kawasaki Bayou, 220 Bayou, that was our tow vehicle, right? This was before everybody had an $8,500 golf cart. You know, we felt like we were balling to have a four-wheeler to pull the race car with, you know? I remember that was like that. Going to that track represented my first tastes of freedom, because I could just jump on that Bayou, that Kawasaki Bayou, and ride around. And I could ride around the road course and all the sweeping turns through the trees. And I remember like being far enough away from the pits that I really felt like I was out on my own. Like I'm 12 years old on a four-wheeler in the middle of nowhere. This is really cool. And my dad did some of the most incredible match racing there. We went there every year a couple times with the Ozark Mountain Super Shifters, which was like a Midwest touring exhibition deal, and also a group that I helped launch, the Mid-America Pro Stock Association. We ran around there a bunch. We went there at least once a year, sometimes twice, for pro stock match races. And I'll never forget my dad being down in the back, had a similar injury to what I do, a herniated disc in his low back. But we were booked in for this race, and my dad had one of the fastest cars in the group, if not the fastest car in the group. And, you know, he was expected to be there. He was a guy that had to be there as part of the show. And I remember my dad could barely get in the car, right? Like his back hurt so bad. And this is before poured seats and all that, you know, I mean, you're climbing into a aluminum seat, you know what I mean? That's basically riding on the ground, you know? And we get dad in this car. He can hardly get in. He's sweating. It's hot out, but he's sweating from pain, right? And he gets in this son of a bitch, this old Cutlass, right? And he proceeds. This is one of those tracks that had a walkway over the track, right? So like right about the 60-foot mark, maybe a little further down track, actually, there was stairs that went up and a walkway over the track, and it was enclosed. So you couldn't see. People weren't allowed to go up there and like watch, but you could walk over the track, and it was kind of a marker. And my dad said, he goes, start the burnout in second gear with a Lenco. It was a Lenco 5-speed. So he already had levers 3, 4, 5 pulled, you know? So get the tires boiling, let off the line lock, pull second gear. It goes into high gear, right? And he comes out of the water, and he's got this thing floorboarded for as far as the eye can see. Still to this day, the greatest burnout I've ever seen. He's going under that walkway, just smoke rolling off this thing. And I remember him doing this big, massive burnout, and the place is going bananas. They had a hell of a crowd there. People are going nuts, jumping and screaming and yelling. And then he goes backing up. And as he's backing up, it's one of my just favorite memories of him racing. He's backing up, and, you know, he like lets out the clutch, and it starts going. And then he's backing up, and he's going fast. And I hear him pulling gears. Bah, bah, bah. He was pulling the Lenco levers going backwards, right? I mean, because it was still going to go into a high gear. It was just in reverse, you know, and so you could hear the motor change tones. And he proceeded to run like a mid 4-second pass, which was flying fast back then. But that facility melts me every time I even think about it, to be honest. Lastly, fast forwarding to the future, the strip at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. We've had a lot of memories there, Mike. Fun experiences in Las Vegas. Yep. And I've just had so many. That place is kind of like, I've been there more than I've been to ZMAX, but it to me is very similar in that it represents a modern super facility. This is how it's supposed to be done. The bathrooms are nice. The concession stands are nice. I get butterflies in my stomach every time I take that exit to pull off, there through the desert and head on that little side street down to the strip at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. It's a beautiful facility that's well kept. It's out there set amongst the desert with the mountains off in the distance and the city strip the other direction. It's far and away one of my favorite places to go. And I actually, the more I talk about it, the more bummed out I am that I didn't go to Vegas for the 4 wides, but I will definitely be going in October. So that's my list of top 5s.
Dion, what's yours?
Oh yeah.
My list is Texas Motor Speedway Texas Motorplex. I'm sorry. Summit Motorsports Park, of course. The Strip as well. That's one of my favorite tracks. However, I'm weird. Like, I think that they should always run the 4 wides. Like, a track that has 4 lanes should always be 4. So I only kind of like Vegas in the spring. I'm not a huge 4 wide guy, but I do kind of appreciate the way that it looks there. And then Orlando, of course, because that was partially where I got my start. And then Chicago, the track in Joliet, which is no longer operational, but that would be my.
Was that your first ever drag racing experience?
In my adult life.
Yeah.
That's
a hell of a place to have your first. That's another facility that it's hard to wrap your head around going, okay, we've got a stadium, essentially, a drag racing stadium that is currently unused.
Right. You know what I mean? Grandstands look unlike any other one, so it's pretty cool.
Holy crap, dude. What a fun. I like these top 5 segments. We need to do this. That was fun.
Yeah.
Are you surprised? Is anybody surprised before we wrap this up? And I think, Mike, we got to let you go, don't we?
No, I'm good.
Oh, you're good? Okay.
JT's let's just no. Tell him you got to go. Yeah,
tell him you got to go. Well, let's just wrap this up. You know what I mean? I know we've covered a lot of ground and we're already over that 2-hour mark, which is fine. I don't know. I've completely spaced Rockingham being on my list, to be honest. And I as strong of a memory as I have of ADRL Drag Stock 3, I think we should do an episode entirely dedicated to stories from that event. I mean, for those that don't know, Dion, dude, your head would have exploded. I mean, there were so many people there that it was literally dangerous. Like, they were fans that were abandoning their cars along, what's that highway out there?
1.
Highway 1. Okay. Yeah. So there were people abandoning their cars on the side of the road and trying to get in, and they were pushing the fences over. Literally, like, teaming up and pushing the fences over to get in the facility. The fire marshal was at the front gate turning people away. Like, it was, I remember being in the tower vividly, and there's a fire marshal guy there, and he's telling Kenny Nolling, if a fight breaks out here or a riot, there are not enough police within like 100 miles to stop it. Like, there's nothing we're going to be. I saw a dude get knocked out cold for a Diet Coke. Last Diet Coke in line. It was the last Diet Coke on the property.
Can you imagine how long he had?
He waited 3 hours to get it.
Yeah.
I've never, still to this day.
It's not a facility that's built to handle that, really.
No.
I think that we've heard numbers of like 20,000 people roughly or something like that. Isn't that how many people?
And it was all at once.
It's like, not meant to handle that. And it was wild, man. I mean,
there were so many people there. People were, and it was, I'm not going to say that they were all hardcore race fans. I want to believe that several of them were, but I mean, admittedly, this was a product of one of the biggest free ticket pushes probably in the history of drag racing. I don't know how many tickets they put out in the area.
They came rolling in
hundreds of thousands
with like hundreds of thousands of tickets.
But the model,
we're like, if this takes off and you guys, if even a small percentage of these people actually use these tickets, you're going to have something. And then I remember in the weeks leading up to it, getting a lot of questions from people that didn't know anything about drag racing or that hadn't been, or wanted to go, but never had an opportunity. And now this free ticket thing. And then kind of this buzz built, like, are you going? Well, I heard I'm going. Well, and it's like this word of mouth thing. And we started hearing this and we're like, this deal could be crazy. We'll see what ends up happening, because you hear that a lot and then it never really comes to fruition. But that Saturday morning, I woke up, luckily already inside the facility in our toter home, because I don't know if I'd even gotten in if I was outside.
I don't think you would have. I think if you were outside the facility, it was one of the only times that I've been at a racetrack and been like, wow, like this is this is trending towards dangerous. I mean, it is dangerous. But
Gary
the
Rowe
enthusiasm was
the water
crazy.
tower.
Because it was largely positive. Yeah, Gary Rowe climbs that freaking gigantic cell phone tower down the way and gets this epic aerial photo, which we've got to find and throw in here because it's worth discussing. But there were so many fans there. People were throwing shit on the track. I mean, it was bonkers, as crazy of a scene as I've ever experienced in my life. And I remember it was such a, I mean, I'm not trying to, like, Kenny Nolling, obviously, I'm sure was very proud, and everybody with the ADRL was very proud, but it was one of those, it was a Woodstockish moment when you just knew this is a significant happening, that we're lucky to be here, and we will be talking about this till we're done talking, right? I mean, it was a legitimate moment in time. And if you think that event, what it has, I mean, there's no PDRA. There's no Midwest Drag Racing Series. There's so many of these sanctions and series and events. They don't happen if that deal didn't happen. Like that, Pro Mod was strong. It was a turning point
for the national movement of 8th Mile Outlaw Drag Racing.
It really was
8th Mile Outlaw Pro Mod Drag Racing.
You know, and I think that for me, I was proud of it, especially because I felt the show lived up to the hype. Like the fanfare, 8th Mile Outlaw Drag Racing delivered. Now, I do think that there are people that say most of the crowd was there because they got a free ticket or whatever. But regardless, I think that the sport lived up to that moment. Like the drag racing that was happening lived up to the moment, lived up to the crowd, lived up to the hype. And if we turned 10 drag racing fans, created 10 drag racing fans that weekend, and that's it, so be it. It still had significance. It showed, in my opinion, that Door Slammer drag racing could carry a show, was something you could build on. And I think they were one of the first, it was, in my opinion, the first time that I'd ever been exposed to that. Like, hey, Pro Mods are the show here. This place is packed. There's no nitro on the property. It was a real moment for the sport of drag racing that I think we will, like I said, be talking about forever. It was when all of a sudden the NHRA knows what the ADRL is. Right. It was a massive shift in awareness for that type of racing and what it meant. And all of a sudden you had guys very proud to say they raced ADRL, very proud to say they had a Pro Nitrous car, very excited and proud to say they had a Pro Extreme car. Even if they weren't there, you wanted to be guilty by association. You wanted to be able to say you were part of that club that produced a moment like that. And it's, man, it really is. I know everything happens for a reason, but there's no telling where that whole thing could be had a handful of things not happen. Yep. Not happen. It's very interesting, man. It really is. Well, guys, I think